A 23-year-old applies to a public relations job on March 8th. The rejection email arrives September 4th. 6 months. The position was likely filled or never real before she finished the cover letter. She is applicant 307. The form letter thanks her for her time. The system that sent it spent none of its own. 200 applications, 0 replies. That is not laziness, and it is not bad luck. It is the predictable output of a market where the cost of applying collapsed to a single click, and the cost of ignoring an applicant fell to 0 alongside it. When both sides pay nothing, volume explodes and meaning disappears. Hold that mechanism. It explains almost everything that follows. The unemployment rate for Americans aged 16 to 24 sits near 10.5%, roughly double the rate for older workers. For first-time job seekers, it touches 13.4%, the highest in 37 years. These are not people on the couch. Unemployment counts only those actively searching and failing. The number measures effort that produced nothing. That distinction matters more than the comment section thinks. Here is the part nobody wants to name. A Gen Z man with a college degree now carries roughly the same unemployment odds as one without. The diploma was sold as insurance. The premium was $40,000 in student debt. The payout increasingly is parity with the uninsured. Something broke in the contract between credentials and work. The next 40 scenes take that machine apart. Start with the search itself. A job board like Indeed is not a marketplace. It is a content farm. Page after page of reposted listings, many expired, many duplicated. A meaningful share, outright scams designed to harvest your phone number and email. The product being sold is not jobs. The product is you. Your data is the inventory. Understand that, and the experience stops feeling personal. The one-click apply button feels like leverage. It is the opposite. It lets you fire 30 applications before bed, which sounds efficient until you realize everyone else does too. The board profits from that volume regardless of outcome. Your resume enters a pile so large no human reads it. You optimized for speed in a system that punishes speed with invisibility. That is the trap. There is a smarter move, and it is boring. Find the listing on the board, then leave the board. Apply on the company's own careers page. This does two things at once. It confirms the job is real and still open, and it routes you past the data brokers. You trade convenience for signal. In a market drowning in noise, signal is the only currency left. Second rule, sort by date posted. You want to be among the first 30 applicants, not the 300th. This is the serial position effect weaponized. A recruiter scanning 100 near identical resumes remembers the first few and the last few and forgets the middle entirely. A posting 3 weeks old is a graveyard. Timing is not politeness here. Timing is the whole strategy. But the blind online search is the worst path by design. The real shortcut is the one that feels distasteful. Networking. Rip the warmth from the word. Networking is manufacturing acquaintances for the explicit purpose of bypassing the application pile. It is not friendship. It is a referral pipeline. And referrals work because they shift the company's risk onto someone who already vouched for you. Why does a referral carry so much weight? Because hiring is fundamentally a risk management problem for the employer. A stranger's resume is pure uncertainty. A warm introduction comes pre-screened by a person whose reputation is now attached to yours. You are not skipping the line. You are reclassifying yourself from unknown risk to managed risk. That reclassification is worth more than a second degree. Use the channels that already exist. College career services, events, alumni coffees, ask for introductions. These feel slow and old-fashioned next to a click. That is precisely why they work. In an era where resumes are written by one machine and read by another, the rarest event in the entire pipeline is a human being actually noticing you. Manufacture that event deliberately. Everything else is volume. Now look at who reads the application. Chief HR officers told the Boston Consulting Group they use AI to write job descriptions, screen candidates, schedule meetings, and evaluate applicants. The first reader of your carefully worded resume is no longer a tired recruiter. It is an algorithm scanning for keywords. You are not writing for a person. You are writing for a filter that cannot be charmed. Some firms now run the interview through a chatbot. The candidate logs into a Zoom-like portal and answers questions from an avatar. The session is recorded. An algorithm parses keywords and grades vocal tone. Think about what that measures. Not judgment, not fit, not the texture of how someone thinks. It measures conformity to a pattern the model was trained on. Deviation reads as failure, and the candidates fight back with their own machine. Asked for the biggest weakness answer. An applicant reads an AI-generated script about being overly critical of his own work, always aiming for high standards. The resume was AI, the screener was AI, the interviewer was AI, the interviewee was AI, the interviewee was AI. At that point, the human is a formality standing between two models negotiating in keywords. This is the absurd equilibrium the market is settling into. Both sides automate to keep pace with the other's automation, and the arms race cancels out. The signal that hiring was supposed to extract, can this person actually do the work, gets buried under layers of synthetic performance. Nobody designed this on purpose. It emerged because every individual actor optimized rationally. That is how systems rot. Suppose you beat the filters and land the job. A rule of thumb, the workplace will be roughly as humanizing as the hiring process that produced it. If it took 9 rounds of automated screening to get in, do not expect pizza parties and grace. The pipeline is not separate from the culture. It is the culture's first honest signal sent before you sign anything. Inside, the new hire meets the middle manager, often a millennial or boomer, who treats a corporate communications role as the most important thing in the universe. Consider a concrete case. A Gen Z hire declines an 8 a.m. meeting because of a workout class. The manager is enraged, handshaking, demanding to know if this should be allowed. Strip the emotion and look at the actual dispute. The dispute is about ownership of unpaid time. The meeting falls outside stated hours of 9 to 5. The hire was told the working window during the interview and arranged her life around it. The gym, her commitments. The manager experiences a boundary as insubordination because the old contract assumed salary meant total availability. The new worker reads salary as a fixed exchange. Both are arguing about who owns the morning. Her counteroffer is precise, almost actuarial. If I skip the gym for your meeting, when are you reimbursing the class? And are you paying me from 8 to 9 or letting me leave at 4? That is not entitlement. That is a worker pricing her time correctly and refusing to subsidize the firm for free. The manager calls it disrespect because the subsidy used to be invisible. This is the heart of the salaried trap in the United States. The phrase on salary quietly mutates into therefore we own your life. The honest reading is narrower. The firm bought 40 hours, maybe 42. It did not buy every Slack notification on a Saturday, every waking moment of availability. The expansion of the workday into all hours was never negotiated. It was assumed, then normalized. So the lazy generation charge collapses on inspection. Gen Z is not uniquely lazy. It is the first generation that can identify a bad deal as a bad deal in real time. When the return on extra effort is negligible, withholding that effort is not weakness. It is accurate pricing. Laziness is moral language for what is actually a rational response to degraded incentives. Compare the eras directly. 30 years ago, a degree did not require bankruptcy. An average salary could buy a house, and your employer could not text you at every hour through a device in your pocket. Promotions meant real raises. Today, the same college costs $40,000 in debt. The raise barely tracks inflation, and the smartphone made the leash permanent. The deal got worse on every axis simultaneously. Given that, ask the only question that matters. What is the incentive for a 23-year-old to destroy himself for ExxonMobil or whoever signs the check? To pay down debt that compounds faster than the raise. To earn a promotion in 6 months that adds responsibility and a pay bump swallowed by inflation. When the reward shrinks and the cost holds, effort follows the math down. A podcaster lectures that Gen Z is the least resilient generation he has seen. That he must check whether they can handle demands arriving on a Saturday because the world does not stop on weekends. Notice the irony embedded in the complaint. The man criticizing weekend availability talks into a microphone for a living. The expectation of unbounded labor is presented as virtue by people who escaped it. Another commentator, Tim Dillon, goes darker and lands closer to the truth. Some of them figured out the country is a scam, he says, so they approach it like a con artist would. They take the days off. They refuse to overdeliver. They extract maximum tolerance for minimum effort. Whether you find that cynical or clever, it is internally consistent. They are mirroring the system's own logic back at it. That mirroring is the cold center of this whole story. Loyalty, intensity, going above and beyond. These are behaviors that only make sense when the system reciprocates. Strip the reciprocity, and they become unilateral gifts to a counterparty that would lay you off on a quiet Tuesday. The worker who withholds them is not broken. He simply stopped giving away what the firm stopped paying for. This logic produces strange surface phenomena, like the so-called Gen Z stare. The complaint. Young workers look at me like I'm an idiot when I act like one. Reframe it. A generation raised on hyper-curated social media is unusually allergic to performance and inauthenticity. The stare is not defiance. It is the visible cost of asking someone to fake enthusiasm for a script they can see through. That does not mean professionalism is dead. Plenty of Zoomers struggle with workplace decorum, with corporate lingo, with office politics. But read it as a skills gap produced by a culture, not a character flaw born in the generation. Pretending to enjoy meaningless ritual is itself a learned skill. A generation that values authenticity simply finds that particular skill harder to fake on command. Watch how the market responds to this friction. It does not fix the work, it sells a remedy. A Gen Z HR consultant claims a 22-year-old has the executive functioning of a 16-year-old. Then notes companies are investing more in soft skills training. She sells soft skills training. The conflict of interest is total. The diagnosis was written by the vendor of the cure. That is a recurring move worth naming. When a system produces friction, an industry forms to monetize the friction rather than remove it. Resume coaches, interview prep services, soft skills boot camps. Each one profits from the dysfunction continuing. The incentive to actually fix hiring is therefore weaker than it looks because too many players now earn a living from it staying broken. Maybe the square peg is not the problem. Maybe the round hole is. Take Starbucks. The CEO wants a return to coffeehouse warmth, so baristas are told to handwrite a personalized message on every cup, even at peak hours. One says they're surveilling us, refuse, and they ask if you want to keep your job. Forced spontaneity, mandatory authenticity. The contradiction is the policy. Think about what that demand actually is. Management wants the emotional output of a worker who cares, while providing the conditions of a worker who is monitored and replaceable. Genuine warmth cannot be ordered under threat of write-up, so you get the performance of warmth, sweaty smiley faces on 300 iced lattes, which customers read as fake, which defeats the entire stated purpose. Why can employers behave this way? Because right now they hold the leverage. Too many new graduates, too many young people, not enough jobs. In a buyer's market for labor, the buyer sets terms, and the terms get harsher precisely because they can. This is not malice in most cases. It is supply and demand expressing itself through dress codes and surveillance, and the leverage cuts even people who thought they were safe. A worker with a marketing degree, a business master's, 6 years of paid social experience, 3 years managing people, hired at senior level, gets pushed into entry-level work while being told to cut her own hours using AI. Her team faced layoffs every 3 months. Then she was cut on a jobs report day. Sit with the cruelty of the structure there. She was asked to automate her own tasks with AI while being evaluated for redundancy. Every efficiency she delivered shortened her own runway. The system asked her to dig the hole and then expressed surprise she fell in. That is not an accident of one bad manager. That is the incentive pointing exactly where it points. The macro data confirms the dread. Black workers saw a sharp jobless surge, partly from mass federal layoffs. More than 10% of workers under 24 are job hunting. Performance-based and strategic layoffs are rising. A jobs report comes in at 22,000 new jobs when 75,000 was expected. Getting cut on that exact day is not bad luck. It is the trend made personal. This is the scene the hook promised to explain, now fully visible. A college graduate working on a master's gets rejected by McDonald's and asks why a 4-year degree cannot land a cashier job. The answer is structural. Credential inflation plus a buyer's labor market means the degree no longer clears the bar. It just raises the bar for everyone competing under it. Now the deeper cause, the one upstream of every manager and algorithm. Layer tariffs onto an already tightening labor market. A tax on nearly every imported good raises prices across the board. As prices rise, people buy less. As demand softens and uncertainty climbs, firms freeze hiring because they fear conditions will worsen, or more often, they already see that worse has arrived, and the burden distributes unequally, as it always does. Apple, Google, Meta absorb a tariff shock by trimming headcount. They have balance sheets thick enough to wait out a storm. The 23-year-old has no such cushion. He has rent due and no severance. The same macro event that is a line item for a trillion-dollar firm is an existential cliff for the worker. Risk flows downhill, so locate the actual villains precisely, because vague anger is useless. It is not only AI. Scummy boards or petty managers. Those are symptoms. The structural cause is the owners of these multinationals and the policymakers whose choices shape the rules they operate under. Markets do not fall from the sky. They are configured by policy, and policy is configured by whoever has the most influence over it. The crucial point about policy is that it is reversible. Everything degrading this job market traces to choices, and choices can be unmade or remade better. That is not optimism, it is mechanism. Minimum wages are set. Union rules are written. Tax rates are chosen. Worker protections are legislated or repealed. None of it is physics. All of it is a dial someone is currently turning. Notice how the dominant institutions respond to the strain, not with material relief, but with moral panic. Fox News frames college students turning to OnlyFans as a story about people wanting to cut the line, not about tuition outrunning every available wage. The platform reportedly moves more money than entire corporations. The coverage scolds the symptom and carefully avoids the cause. Birth rates fall, and the same framing applies. The story becomes young women choosing other paths, never the plain arithmetic that children have become unaffordable for people who cannot cover rent or groceries. Moral panic is cheap. It costs no powerful person anything. Actually raising incomes would require making someone with leverage uncomfortable, so the culture war narrative gets manufactured instead. That substitution is the real product on offer. Not better lives, not higher incomes, but a steady supply of outrage and cheap goods to buy. Keep the population arguing about avocado toast and OnlyFans and the Gen Z stare, and the underlying distribution of money and power never enters the conversation. The culture war is not a distraction from the economy. It is a feature of how it stays unchallenged. So when Zoomers opt out, the choice is coherent. Drive for DoorDash, earn enough to live. Skip the health insurance because it was never affordable anyway. Go home at a fixed hour with no boss texting on Saturday about something nobody cares about. It is not ambition failing. It is a rational exit from a deal whose terms stop justifying the surrender of a life. But be honest about the limits of that exit. The follow your dream, start your own thing path works for some, and it carries real risk. All of it loaded onto one person's shoulders. Not everyone can or wants to be an entrepreneur. An economy that only rewards those who can self-employ their way out is not a solution. It is an admission that the employment model itself has failed the median worker. What would an actual fix look like mechanically? Raise the minimum wage, make it easier to form unions, whose decline tracks almost perfectly with the rise in income inequality. Tax corporations and the ultra-rich, provide universal health care and childcare, strengthen overtime law and worker protections, mandate vacation, paid family, and sick leave. None of that is utopian. Most of it already exists somewhere it works. And the union point deserves emphasis because it is the lever most directly tied to the problem. The collapse of collective bargaining is not a side note in the inequality story, it is a primary cause. When workers cannot negotiate as a block, each one faces the firm alone, with no leverage in a buyer's market. Restoring that bargaining power changes the balance more than any individual resume hack ever could. Now demolish the laziness myth with the data itself. Asked to name what matters most for success, Gen Z most often cites a fulfilling job or career and having the money to do what they want. They are not refusing work. Work ranks at the very top of their definition of a good life. They are refusing meaningless work that pays badly and demands everything. The emphasis is on fulfilling. That single word reframes the entire crisis. The conflict was never effort versus laziness. It was a generation that wants its labor to mean something colliding with a system that strips meaning out and demands loyalty anyway. They will work hard. They will not pretend a degrading deal is a gift. The friction everyone keeps blaming on character is really a dispute over terms. So here is the cold conclusion, the opening promised. Finding a job is broken. Having a job is often worse. And politicians and billionaires are actively making it harder, not by accident, but by following incentives that pay them to. Things will likely deteriorate before they improve. There is no motivational pivot coming because the honest read of the data does not support one. But the same coldness that removes comfort also removes despair. None of this is natural law. It is configuration. Tariffs were chosen. Union decline was engineered. The salaried trap was normalized, one unanswered Slack message at a time. What was assembled by choices can be disassembled by choices. The leverage workers lack individually. They can rebuild collectively, slowly, deliberately. The one durable advantage this generation holds is clarity. They can name a scam as a scam, price their own time correctly, and refuse to subsidize a firm that would not blink at cutting them. That clarity is power if it is organized. At the workplace through boundaries and bargaining, and at the ballot box through policy. Withholding free loyalty is a start, not a strategy. If this is the kind of analysis that is actually useful to you, subscribe. I cover the mechanics of money, work, and incentives in a way designed to make you think more precisely, not feel more motivated. There is a difference, and most content about your career deliberately blurs it. This channel does the opposite. It hands you the machine and shows you exactly where the levers are. The next one is going to be just as cold about something people get just as emotionally wrong. The quiet math of why your raise never keeps up and who is structurally on the other side of that trade. Same detached lens, same uncomfortable arithmetic. If you would rather understand the system than be chilled through it, stay. That is the entire offer.